In today's show, we're going to talk about PowerApps security, environment, Plan 2 licenses, SharePoint, SQL, all of the different pieces that you need to understand as you're building and deploying apps in your environment so that you can make sure that you've got a good grasp on this whole landscape. So there's a lot of little pieces here. Some of it you'll know, some of it you think you know, and you probably don't actually know. And some of it'll be brand new. But this is one of those videos I've been trying to put together for a while that I just said, the heck with it, I'm doing it today, no matter what. So before we do any of that, first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911, those guys. And today we're going to talk about PowerApps permissions, security, we're going to talk about environments, we're going to talk about the Plan 2 license, we're going to do it in the context of some SharePoint apps and some SQL apps. And the reason I wanted to do this is because there's a lot of confusion in this space and a lot of people who just don't really think a lot about it in the grand scheme of things. And I had this talk with some different consultants and other people that were PowerApps, really smart PowerApps people. And every one of them kind of walked away from it going, I never really thought of it that way. So what I want to do is kind of walk you guys through the security of a couple of different apps and explain to you really what's going on and some of the ways that people can get around the security that you probably haven't thought about, and just make sure that we're kind of all on the same page. So I will, we'll kind of jump in the beginning. You'll probably know some of it, right? So just stick with me, but you'll kind of be like, oh, I already knew that. I knew that. But I promise by the time we get to the end, which you kind of have to do it in order, when we get to the end, you're going to be like, oh, I see how that all works. So, because one of the things we're going to expose is how you're probably passing around that SQL connection a little more than you thought you were. And I bring up SharePoint and SQL in this context because as somebody who's built hundreds of apps for customers, I can tell you that those right now are the two most popular data sources. So I thought those were the two best places to kind of talk about security with you guys. Fair? Fair. All right. So let's just switch over to my desktop, dive in because I got a lot to say today. So over here on my desktop, what are we going to do? I've made a quick little app. So this is just a gallery. It is pointed at the employees SharePoint list, right? So this employees list, nothing complicated there. I threw a simple form that was in view mode and put some edit, save, and delete buttons. That's it, right? I mean, literally submit form, edit form, remove the selected item in the gallery. Very simplistic forms. So what I want to do first here is I'm going to take this app and I'm going to share this app. And so what we're going to do is we're going to hit share. And then when this pops up, we're then going to go right here. We're going to say, all right, we want to share this with Chewy. So there's Chewy the dog. And so now one of the things I want to notice here, right? So we're going to ignore the co-owner. We're not worried about that experience. This is just about sharing with my users. And so the data permissions, make sure the users have access to the data used in your app, including gateways, APIs, connectors, and entities. A lot of people never read these words. And so right now, right, I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. We're just gonna hit share. Yay, I've shared the app with Chewy. That's all I really cared about. Okay, so I'm gonna switch browsers. And so what I've done is up here at the top, you can see it's purple. So Chewy is a purple browser. And you can see his little dog picture way up here. So that's how you know we're on the Chewy world. So if I go over here into Chewy's land, right, and we do a little refresh action, and then we're going to click on shared with me, and so then there's the SharePoint permissions app we just shared. You can see it took 5 minutes because that was the last time the app was whatever, you don't care. Okay, so if we hit play on this app, all right, this is going to run the app in the player. It's going to say, hey, you need SharePoint permissions to do it. Chewy's just going to click allow, right? No one reads these pop-ups. And so you get over here, you're going to see that Chewy gets a blank app. Now, sometimes you'll see a flicker of a red message at the top, sometimes you won't. But what has happened in this case, right? This is one of those things you probably already knew, but Chewy doesn't have access to the SharePoint list. So that was the first thing I wanted you guys to acknowledge, right? Is that Chewy, in order to interact with an app with a SharePoint data source, has to have access to the SharePoint list. So if we switch back over here, I can jump over to the SharePoint site. I can be like, all right, fine, share, and then who, and so we'll type in Chewy. And so then I think here you'll see it's going to send me an email invite. It's going to make him a member. Cool. So we're going to share this app or this SharePoint site with Chewy. And so if we come back over here and do a refresh, boom, we've got data. Okay. Now, immediately when I see this, I'm like, oh man, I did not really want Chewy to be able to save, edit, and delete. I didn't want him to be able to do that. Okay. So typically the most common way this is solved, right? There's a lot of different ways to solve it, but the most common thing that we see is that people will come in here and they're going to either take these buttons and move them to another screen that Chewy can't get to, or you could do something like say, the visible And notice I selected all three by holding down the control key. With all three of them selected, I can just say visible if user.email equals, oh, that's me, Shane at PowerApps911.com, then they become visible. So boom. So it shows up for me, but when Chewy logs in, because his email doesn't equal that, right? So the visible will be false, and so he won't see the buttons. Cool. Okay, so file, save, publish the app again, publish this version. Okay, so then if we switch back over here, here's Chewy. We can do a refresh again. Perfect. So now we've given Chewy the ability to browse our employees list, see the data, but he can't edit or delete the data. Or can he? This is a very common mistake. So what is stopping Chewy from going to site/PA, going to the employees list, and deleting data directly from here, right? He can go in and say, all right, you know what? Greg actually scratched me behind the ears last time he was here, so Greg's title can be truck driver, just plain truck driver. Be real nice to Greg. We'll say save, and boom, just like that, it has updated. So this is the first lesson in the security, right? Is don't let your users go around it. So if you're building it on a SharePoint data source, you have to understand that in order for them to have permissions in the SharePoint app to do things like edit the data, they have to have access to the data source SharePoint to edit the data. And if they have access in SharePoint, then there's nothing stopping them from going to the browser. Now, some of you have done things like hidden this site, so they're like, oh, the user can't find it. I don't believe in security by obscurity. But if you're going to do that, you got to really think about things like search exposing you. Can the user find their way here secretly? And at the end of the day, yes, you could probably find a way to hide this from them in SharePoint, but I don't love it. So I wanted to make sure we understood that. You can go around the app if it's in SharePoint. And the reason for that is because if we go back over to the Power App for one more second, let's go back over here. Let's just change this back to visible to true. I meant to show you something else. So then we'll save and publish again, and publish, and publish. All right, and then we'll switch back over here. We'll do another refresh. See, this happens sometimes. So PowerApps is still caching the version that he didn't have access to. So we'll do another refresh. There's the buttons. So sometimes the caching that helps it run better causes a little grief. Anyway, what I wanted to show you real quick, so maybe Chewy comes back over here. He's like, you know what? I regret that Greg is not very nice. So edit. So truck driver is still ugly, just like that. I mean, look at that picture. He's an ugly guy. We'll say save. All right. So the thing I want to show you is if we go back over to SharePoint, I'm still logged in as me even, and do a refresh. So the Power App updated it, and the last person to modify it, oh, where's my modified column? I added that right before we started this. Modified by, apply. So Chewy was the modifier because the SharePoint connector uses Chewy's account to get in. Okay, cool, got it. You probably knew all that, but I wanted to have the conversation with you anyway. All right, so next up, let's switch back over to PowerApps and let's look at an app that is built using SQL as the data source because it's a little trickier to go around all the fun things, but we're going to talk about that. So hang on, let's switch over there. Okay, so over here I made a simple SQL app, same type of thing, right? So it's connected to a table called test, a form, and then the same buttons again, just deleting out of this environment, right? But same exact stuff. And if we do view data sources, you'll see that just over here it's a database called Branson and the table is called test. Okay, so the reason I do this is because a lot of people go with SQL as their choice. And one of the big upsides of SQL is I put the username and password in the connection, right? When I initially set up that connection, I put it in there. And so now within the app, it's using that account, that hard-coded username and password for all the interactions. So I don't have to give Chewy's account access to this SQL database for him to use it. As long as he has the app and he has the connection, boom, Chewy is in. So this is a very common scenario, right? Yay, we've done this, but I don't have to worry about managing permissions for Chewy. So let's look at how that would work. So we're going to, real quick, we'll say SQL permissions app. We'll hit save. Okay, so then now it's saved. Now I'm going to hit share. And if this idea of like building an app and connecting to SQL, if that's all new to you, I'll put a link to a video down below, right? I don't think it's new to many of you, but if it is, no big deal. There's a video to walk you through building that. I just don't want to put all that back on video because video is long enough as it is. So now we're going to go over here and we're going to say Chewy again. I'm not going to make him a co-owner. Now, read the button, right? This is where people get in trouble. They don't read the words on the screen a lot. Make sure your users have access to the data used in your app, including gateways, APIs, connectors, and entities. Okay, whatever. But SQL Server implicitly shared. What does that mean? Who cares? No big deal, right? So we're going to hit share. So it is sharing the app, and it is implicitly sharing that data connection. So if we go back over here to PowerApps, and let's oh, there it is. It showed up faster than I can get here. Good job, PowerApps. So let's click on the SQL permission app. Hey, you need to use this. Okay. So say allow. Bammo, whammo, Chewy is in here, right? Oh, I bet I didn't connect to my data. Well, let's go check on our app real quick. Oh, Shane, you were doing so good. Right here, data source, the item should be gallery 1. Dot select. Man, I was so proud that I'd done well. Oh well. So I'll do file, save, publish again. All right, so I did all that. And then now if we go back over here and do a refresh, oh, that's the cache issue getting us again. No big deal. We'll hit refresh one more time. Yay! So now we have a properly working app that is backed by a SQL database. So this is what you wanted, right? The idea now is that the only things that Chewy can do to this database are things I've given in the app, because Chewy doesn't have access to that hard-coded username and password. So even if Chewy wanted to access this data directly via like SQL Management Studio or Excel or Access or any of those other crazy ways, he doesn't have the account information. Chewy can't get in. Yay! Or can he? Whoa. So what a lot of people do not realize, like no one ever realizes this, but if I go over back to PowerApps, so I'm logged in as Chewy still, I'm going to say, hey, I want to create an app. Create a Canvas app. No big deal, right? So we're going to go into tablet layout. And so then Chewy says, well, I'm going to insert a gallery in my app like I would expect. Boom. And so now Chewy says, select a data source. Oh, add a data source. Wait a minute. So those are the normal Chewy ones he's always seen. But what do we see right here? SQL Server Branson. So when we implicitly shared that connection with him, we implicitly shared that connection with him. So Chewy can now click on Branson. Here is all the tables. So in our app, we were using this test table, right? So you can almost make an argument for understanding how he has access to that. But look at this. My payroll tables are also in that same database. Bad idea, but it happens. What is stopping Chewy from being like, oh, let's go see what payroll data looks like? Connect. Well, I'll tell you right now, there ain't nothing stopping Chewy. So thankfully there's no data in my payroll tables, but if I had super secret data in there, Chewy would see it. Worse yet, I think in a previous demo, Chewy actually deleted all the records because Chewy is not using Chewy's username and password to do any of this, right? Chewy is using that hard-coded connection. When I initially created the connection, right? So like if we go back over here, so we're logged in as me, we can go to data and connections. And so down here somewhere, there's the Branson one. And so if we say edit, right? So when I originally set this up, I did the server name, the database name, and then that's where I put in the username and password. And so that username and password is what Chewy is using because I shared this connection with him. He can't see this information, right? If we switch back to him and he goes to that same place, so data, connections. But there's the connection. There's the edit button. So he doesn't know what the username and password is, but he is now privy to using this connection. So this opens up a lot of red flags for people as soon as I show them this. Now there's different things that you can think about here. So one is, remember this account, let's switch back to me for a second. So this Chewy the dog account and the password here, those are my SQL logins, and they have whatever rights they have to whatever tables and databases. So one of the things I could have done to make this problem less severe is I could have created the connection and only used a SQL account that had access to that one table. So then at least that way Chewy would only be able to get in and interact in that one table. He wouldn't be able to see that secret payroll table that was also there. But anything that my app can do, right? Because Chewy will be connected to it as this account. That causes a lot of grief. So Whew, what do we do now then, right? You're kind of like, oh my goodness, there is no secure way to do this thing ever. I am so frustrated. I understand. That's what you have me for, though. So what do we need to do? This has now become my official recommendation. I've toyed with this recommendation for a while, and now this is just wholeheartedly, I think the whole world should do this. So in PowerApps, right, we're still logged in as me. If you go up here and click on Admin Center, what I want you to do is I believe that in every environment, at least one user should have a Plan 2, a PowerApps Plan 2 license. Because PowerApps Plan 2 licenses do a lot of great things, right? They get you CDS, they get you model-driven apps, but they get you a bunch of additional analytics about who's using your apps. Woohoo! We like analytics, we like data. But they also get you this thing called environments. And so when you create an additional environment, what you're able to do is start to set up some security walls. So that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to click on New Environment. Environment name is Secure. Yeah, let's call it Secure. My region is US, environment type. And so do I want a trial or production? I'm going to go ahead and create a trial. And so it's going to hopefully provision me an environment. Yes. And so then now it says, hey, do you want to create a database? So that would be a CDS database. That's for another day. We're not going to mess with that right now, but you probably do want to go ahead and do this. And the nice thing about the trial environment, right, is it's a free way for me to get in here and start to explore P2. So when you do it the first time, you'll be able to set up a P2 license trial, right? So this environment's good for 29 more days, or it's 30 days minus the seconds we've been using it now. But you can do that. And then once you kind of get familiar with all this, I wholeheartedly believe that all of us need to sign up for one PowerApps Plan 2 license. And so with a PowerApps Plan 2 license, instead of this being a 30-day trial, you can actually create an additional production environment and then start to handle security. Okay, so now that we have our environment, I'm going to click on it. And so we're going to go into security. And so here you can see there are two different roles. So environment admins and environment makers. And so for the admins, well, surprise, surprise, that is me. And for the makers, surprise, surprise, that is no one. This is exactly what I want in this particular scenario. Okay, so because now what can happen is I'm going to go back over here to PowerApps. I'm going to refresh so it knows about my environment. And so if we hit the drop down up here, you're going to see three environments. So this top one, the default, that is our company environment. Now it's named Shane because of a long, complicated story that you don't want to understand. But you would see, so hopefully you'd see your company name up here for your default environment, right? And the thing to remember is that everyone that has a PowerApps license is a maker in that environment. That's the reason that Chewy can get in and make apps, and he was able to, leverage that connection that we'd shared with him unwittingly. This bottom one, this is a personal environment that I have created, so you can ignore that one. But then there's our friend Secure. So I'm going to switch to Secure. And so, right, it expires in 29 days. Got it. But I have no apps. That makes sense. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say create an app. Create an app. And so then I will pause the video while I build an app real quick, and then I'll come back to you. Oh, unpause for 1 second. So when I'm building the app, notice when I go to add a data source that I don't have any data sources, right? Because I've never made any connections. And all of those connections are controlled per environment. So I have to go and set all those up for the first time. So I'll be back in a second again, but I thought you should see that. Okay, so there's a super simple app again. And so all I did was I went and set up, right? So view data sources. And so I connected to that same SQL test table again. But the difference, right, is our environment is secure this time. We're in that, and I probably should have named it secure, but we're in the environment I named secure, right? So now we're just going to take the app and do the same type of thing. And so we're going to call this secure app. We're going to save this. And then now we're going to share it. And so then we can still just share with Chewy like we have been. So Chewy the dog, share. Now it did warn us, right, that it implicitly shared the connection again with Chewy, but that's okay this time because if we go over here to PowerApps, right, let's get out of here for a second. Let's just jump over into Chewy's email. Hopefully he's not getting too much spam these days. And so here we go. So here's the app I shared with him. So we'll say open. Yep, allow that connection, sure. So Chewy is in here, right? So Chewy can use our app. Yay, that's what we wanted. That was the main thing we wanted. But then now if I go back over here to PowerApps, and if I go back to, let's go to home for PowerApps, right? We're still logged in as Chewy. He doesn't see secure up here in the dropdown. So Chewy doesn't have maker privileges in the secure environment. So Chewy can't get into the secure environment, and he can't get in there and start to fiddle and use that SQL connection, even though he has access to it. So this is how we keep him out. Now, you would notice that over here, so under connections, he still has the access in this environment. Well, let's get rid of that. So I can go back over here as me, data connections. Oh, not in the secure environment though, in the proper environment. That's one of the tricks. You have to make sure you're in the right environment all the time when you start using these things. So now connections. And so then way down here at the bottom under, there's the Branson one. So we're going to say share. And we're going to say Chewy, you're gone. We'll let Scuba continue to have access. Saved, permissions were updated. Perfect. So then now switch back as Chewy. I like what I did with this purple browser. I've never done that before. That was a good idea, Shane. Yay. Do a refresh. And so now Chewy doesn't have access to the Branson SQL connection. Woo, 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 woo. And just to make sure, over in the other environment where he does still have access to it, we refresh, the data connection still works. So now we've gotten our cake and we can eat it too. And that sounded so corny. But no, basically what happens, right? So that now any app that I build in the secure environment and I use those SQL connections, they will implicitly get shared with all of my employees. No big deal, because I'm not going to let any of them be a maker in the environment, right? That's back to over here under Admin Center. And so then we can click on Secure Environment and Security. And so as long as I don't manually add them as makers in here, then we're good, right? Now, something you do need to be careful of, I'm pretty sure works the way I think it does. Let's go over here. Let's share this app again. And let's say, hey, now what I want to do is I want to share this app with Chewy, but I want to make Chewy an owner this time. Let's see what that does. So we're going to say share. All right, all permissions were changed successfully. Appreciate that. And let's go back over to environments, refresh the screen, click on environment makers. All right, so it looks like Chewy, one of the demos I did, Chewy magically showed up there. So let's just double check. Let's just make sure that Chewy can't get into the environment still. So we'll go back over here. We'll do a refresh. Oh, there's the secure environment. There we go. There's a secure app. And so then now if Chewy goes into apps and creates an app and it says, hey, there's no database. Click OK. Canvas. So Chewy can't create one. Can he edit this one? So it looks like Chewy can edit the app, right? I've got it locked still, so I need to go over here and I need to go let go of the app. So file, close. Let's try this again, open. Okay, so that works as expected, but we just want to make sure that you understood that, right? So if I give Chewy the ability to be a co-owner of an app, he can co-own, he can edit that app even in this other environment. So as the owner or the manager of the security of this environment, you need to make sure that you're kind of paying attention to who you're giving access to and are you okay with it. And in my head, what happens eventually is that under environment makers, at some point, Chewy will show up here. But I could be lying there. So, you know, that's the joys of PowerApps sometimes. It's a little bit of a moving target. But the important thing to note is that Chewy is now over here editing the app because I told it to let him edit the app. So just kind of be thinking about that. Now, the other big win with the P2 license, I think, let's see if we go back over here. Let's see if we get the data that fast. So we'll go back to my normal switch environments. And so if we go into my different apps, so this is the actual timesheet our company uses. It's pretty cool. I wrote that, imagine that. And so analytics now. So then one of the fun things should be is because I'm currently on I have a P2, a Plan 2 license, I now have the ability to see all of the actual activity, right? So you can see most people are using the Windows web player. You can see the daily activity. You can see, you know, the amount of times it's ran. And you can also then get into, so that's the usage. The location one's a little interesting as well. Let's see what this shows us because we have people kind of spread all over the country. Well, so it looks like all the locations are going to just show as the US. What if I zoom in? Well, that's no fun. I bet at some point the license or it updates and it shows me. Because I've seen this for one of my other customers over in the UK or in the EU, and I saw a bunch of different locations. So who knows why it's not showing me? Probably because I'm doing it by country, and there's probably some way to tell it to do it differently, but whatever. So and then the performance, load times and things like that. So good little features. Also then with a plan 2 that exposes you to CDS and model-driven apps, I owe you guys a video on that. I just haven't had time to do that yet because I want to make sure that I got my head wrapped around it. But hopefully this helps everyone understand security. I know if you have questions, right, I always respond to the comments, so please leave them. I'm still, myself, like I said, I've really paused to put this video out there for a while because I understood there's a lot of nooks and crannies that I probably still haven't figured out myself. But if you find those nooks and crannies, please leave me comments, hit me up, email me, Shane@PowerApps911. You can tweet me, and let's talk about them so we can help everyone learn together and understand better kind of how these environments work. But if you're asking, like when we talk to new customers today, I'm getting them to buy one Plan 2 license for one person in their environment. So then that person can create a second production environment called Secure Apps or something like that. And then all the apps with SQL connections that we don't want to expose to the whole company, we are building them in that environment. That is our new SOP, standard operating procedure, going forward. So, okay, that's enough for today. I've talked a lot. I'm sure you're overwhelmed. I'm guessing half of you will watch this a second time to try and figure out because you were kind of in and out. And now you're like, oh, I probably should pay attention. That's okay. If I can do anything, you know where to reach me, PowerApps911. And if not, thanks and have a great day. Hey, it's me again. If you got a second, click the subscribe button. That always keeps me making more videos. Or if you want to work together, need some help getting your Power Apps going, hit me up at PowerApps911. Always happy to work together. Or finally, if you're really just looking for more videos, that's probably what it is. Check out the Power Apps playlist over here and enjoy that. All right, thanks and have a great day.